Hey, I'm Ben Silverio.
And I'm Aaron Klein.
And I'm Ansel Birch, your host in post.
And it's time to party.
Pew, pew. Pew, pew.
We are not doctors and we don't give medical advice. Please drink responsibly.
Wait, why don't I hear you guys?
Uh-oh.
God damn it.
He missed my air drums. That was so good.
I love that both of us went, uh-oh, at the same time. The only response we could come up with.
Hey.
This is our special Goofs and Gaffs episode, full of all of the digressions that we didn't have time for otherwise. Hope you enjoy this cavalcade of madness.
How old are you, Ansel?
I'm 34. I'll be 35
Okay.
in 3 weeks.
Yeah. Oh, damn. Happy almost birthday.
Thanks, yeah. 2 days after Christmas. It's a great time.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah.
Sorry, that sucks. That's, my niece's birthday's the 28th, and she's just now starting to figure out, like, oh, wait a minute.
Hi.
That's not... Hold on a second.
Buckle up, kid.
For real. I have an uncle who, he's by marriage, he's married to one of my aunts, who is an identical twin, and they were born on Christmas,
Oof.
which is just like, you can't get a worse lot than that.
That's at that point, your parents have to like start celebrating half birthdays or something just to
For
like
real.
give you something as a kid.
Yeah, totally. I'm pretty sure that my uncle does still, as an adult, celebrate his half birthday as opposed to doing it on Christmas. Because, like, that sucks.
Well, and like as a December baby, like you're never in school during your birthday, so like you never get that like friends party or cupcakes at school. Like that was never a thing. You know, at best there's like a thing where everybody celebrates the December birthdays all at once, just so that you know you can get it in before the breaks. Which like, in the grand scope of terrible things to happen to you as a kid is pretty minimal, but it's still like, I still don't give a shit about my birthday for the most part. Like,
I feel that way, like, I'm June 19th, and so I had kind of the same thing where I was always on summer vacation on my actual birthday, but because of where it falls in the calendar, my half birthday was always during our winter break, and so the way that a lot of people did it is they would just do your half birthday, and so I got the double side of like, well, I guess no one will ever celebrate my birthday then.
Yep.
And like I forget about my birthday all the time. I this last year I got to June 18th and people were like, "What are you doing for your birthday?" And I was like, "Oh shit."
And you were like, "My what?" Oh.
Especially during quarantine where it was like nothing, I guess. I'm gonna go on a bike ride, I guess.
One thing on what you guys were talking about while I was having my headphone problems. I love birthdays. I think I'm like the only one out of our friends who really loves birthdays.
When
Stella
does
loves
your birthday
birthdays.
fall in the year?
Yeah.
February 20th.
So you were always in school on your birthday. That's why you like birthdays.
Because that's what started that conversation, is like, I was born 2 days after Christmas, so like, unless there's a new Lord of the Rings movie coming out, I don't know what to do with the birthday. That was the only tradition we ever had. And she was born during summer break. So.
Yep. Alas.
Yeah, but at least your birthday was in the summer. Like, I have to deal with like snow during my birthday.
That's true. I like that mine's like almost 6 months apart, because then I get like celebrations on both sides of the year, but at the same time, like like I was telling Ansel, as an adult, like I don't give a shit about my birthday. I just forget about it all the time. Now I'm in my 30s, I'm like, what am I waiting for? Literally 40 and then 50, and like, who gives a shit other than that?
If it's not divisible by 5, yeah.
Yeah, who cares?
Maybe I'm just vain.
I mean, I think birthdays are great in concept. Like, it's an opportunity to like have a celebration that is not tied to a specific like season or you know, universal event. It is a celebration that you get to have with your friends, and any opportunity to have a celebration with a friend group is worthy. I think it's a great idea.
I also love planning a party. Like, I remember in college, like, we'd make a whole weekend out of it. Like, have like a have like a themed party in our apartment, then go to a concert, and then go to a bar or something. I remember I convinced my roommates to throw an 80s party. That was a great time.
Sounds great.
Remember theme parties?
I was gonna say I fucking loved theme parties. I lived in a weird college like theater commune house, so we had theme parties like once a month.
Nice.
My favorite theme that the house had, I was not at this party because I had already moved to Chicago, but they had a geriatric themed party and everyone dressed up as old people and came to the party. And so there's just hilarious photos of people dressed as very old people playing like beer pong and like playing drinking games and shit. It's very funny. Those are my favorite kinds of themes.
My fraternity used to host the Anything But Clothes party.
I love those. We did a couple of those too.
Yep. We had to shut that down my sophomore year.
I'm not shocked. Yeah, I can't imagine a school-funded place being like, yeah, that's cool, but like as a theater company where we were like, okay, everyone, after the theater party, we're all gonna go to somebody else's house and like change into these other clothes, wink wink.
Mm-hmm.
I made a dress out of ties one year. I put a lot of work into it. It was very cool. I was really proud of it.
That's amazing.
I don't even know where it is now. Yeah, it was pretty dope.
I remember our Valentine's Day party one year. We had an ice luge, and I wore a white suit jacket to a party with lots of red drinks.
Oh,
like an idiot.
That's a really dumb idea. Unless you want your white suit jacket to become stained with red. In which case, great idea.
Right. It looked like I murdered someone at the end of the night.
Oh, I'm fucking sure.
It's like a John Wick movie.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. One time for St. Patty's Day, my friend had a pro wrestling party, and I showed up as Sting.
Yeah.
That was fun.
Fuck yeah. That's a good theme.
My face paint was just all over the place by the end of the night.
One of my favorite party themes, sort of in the same vein as Anything But Clothes, we had, for my going away party, we had we called it a Rubik's Cube party. So you had to wear, each piece of clothing had to be a solid color, and you were supposed to come in as many different pieces of solid colored clothing as possible. And the idea was, at the end of the night, everyone should be wearing a solid colored outfit. And so you had to like exchange shirts and like pants and stuff. And so like as people got more and more drunk throughout the night, it was like, oh, I'll take those earrings and you give me that hat over there. And like, I think I got all of my clothes done in yellow. And I had a friend, Matt, who did an outfit of every single color. That was his goal by the end of the night, was that he wanted to be able to hit every single one of the Rubik's Cube colors, and he did it too.
Wow.
It's a fun theme, but it's something that you have to be playing with people you're really comfortable with in order to be like, give me your pants. And you also have to like come to the party prepared. Like I wore a pair of pants that had like a big drawstring on them because I was like, I know I'm going to have to be exchanging these with people who like our clothes don't fit the same. And so it makes you think about the like ways that you can be inclusive of everyone at the party even before you get there too. Yeah. It's just a really fun theme. Again, not something I would probably ever do now as like a 30-year-old, but as like a 20-year-old, it was a super fun theme. Love a party.
That's a great college party. Yeah.
Yeah, it
right?
is.
Yeah, it was super fun.
Oh man, I went to one at the University of Penn, and it was like a high school party. And the idea was that you came dressed as your high school self.
I've been to parties like that before, too. Those are fun.
Yeah. Luckily, I basically still wore the same thing that I wore in high school, so...
Great.
I just had to change the band shirts,
We had a come as someone else party once where we had to dress as we dressed as other people from within our friend group, younger, because we'd all known each other for so long at that time. And one of my friends came as me as a 19-year-old, and she wore this big floppy hat and like wore a huge blonde wig and like borrowed my clothes from people who had borrowed clothes from me. And so she came in my actual clothing. It was great. It's a fun theme.
I remember Stella Nick's Halloween party the first time that like I went to any function with our group of friends. And like 3 people came dressed as Stella.
Yes.
It was Bobby, Helena, and Taryn, I guess?
I think Taryn did, yeah.
Yeah.
Hilarious. She's very easy to dress as. You just pick a look and you're like, aesthetic. That's true. I can say that. I've known her for 14 years. It's fine. All right. Well.
All right. Should we try this again?
Let's try this again.
Okay. Whew.
My boss keeps calling it. I was in a training seminar last week, and someone kept referring to it as Zoom applause, and I was like, it's just ASL applause. That's all. You can just call it sign applause. That's fine. But they just kept referring to it as Zoom applause, and I was like, whatever. Say whatever you want.
I guess.
That feels a little appropriative.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
That's okay. If it hadn't been a meeting of like several hundred people, I might have said something, but I was like, not worth it. It is not worth me interrupting the CEO of my company to correct this.
Oh, you had a Zoom call with Ronald McDonald?
Fuck you. How dare you?
I'm sorry, Grimace does all the work. Ronald's like the figurehead.
For real, after Mayor McCheese was forced to resign.
After the scandal.
H.I.R. Puff and stuff came for his ass, and Mayor McCheese was like, peace out forever, I guess.
I think HR Puffin stuff needs to run the human resources department.
It would probably be better. There is a line in, we're talking about Days of Future Past. LOL, congratulations everybody. There's a line in Days of Future Past where when Wolverine starts to get displaced in time, and he's like, where the fuck am I? What's happening? And Professor X goes, you're on acid. Someone gave you really bad acid. And there's just this moment where he stops like, oh, am I on acid? Is that what's happening? I really connected with that moment, and it was like, oh, that's right, this is a pretty good movie. That moment in particular, I was like, well, that's realistic in a way that I'm uncomfortable that I know.
That moment just describes our show pretty much, you know.
Oh my gosh.
There you go.
It's me going, wait, what's happening? What's happening? Aaron, you're just on acid. Oh, that tracks. Okay, that's fine.
Oh, okay. All right.
Okay, that okay.
Let's try introducing the episode.
Yes, let's do that.
Yes.
This is going to be great.
Congratulations, Ansel.
I know, right?
You got this shit show to cut together now.
Future me.
Yay!
Or past you?
No.
Huh?
Oh, God.
I think that looked good.
All right, cool. Yay!
Yeah. Doing the thing.
Doing the thing. All right. So fuck the government.
Yeah.
That's a good place to start.
Right? Welcome to Time to Party.
Oh,
Fuck the
man.
government! I mean, I don't think that's that off-brand for me, to be honest.
That's very true.
Nope.
That's
No.
Aaron's whole brand.
That's right. Magneto was right.
They don't want anything to do with you, really.
Oh,
No
man.
lies.
I mean, there is no lie there.
Nope.
No, sir. All right. You ready, Ben?
Cheerleading is a very specific set of training.
Yes. It's a lot of crossover, more than you would expect, probably. Maybe not. Cheerleading's fucking weird. Anyway, not talking about Bring It On again. Our favorite thing.
We'll have to do a special episode for Bring It On.
I know, right? Like, this has nothing to do with time travel except for us time traveling in our own nostalgia.
Maybe that's the angle. We watch the movie that doesn't have time travel in it, and we try to figure out where time travel might be in it.
Ooh, okay.
Like conspiracy theorists.
I'm into that. I like it.
The only reason he knows that in this scene must be time travel.
The only way Sparky Kaplasky could have gotten to all of these coasts up and down the California coast is time travel, obviously.
Yes,
like,
obviously.
duh. This is just like facts.
Makes sense.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Yep.
I love it.
That's our April episode, April Fools.
I like it.
That's a great idea. I really like that, actually. It's very... People are gonna open and be like, what?
I'm here for it.
Don't worry, everything's fine.
Yeah, you
It's
know.
your favorite movie.
World's just falling apart, and we're doing whatever the hell we want here at Time to Party.
It's time for cheerleading.
Nothing means anything anymore.
All right. Ben, what movie are we talking about today?
Today we are talking about the 2014 Marvel Mutant
Extravaganza?
movie.
I thought you were going to use some kind of pejorative term like absolute garbage fire.
Today we're talking about X-Men Days of Future Past.
We sure are. We
Yes,
sure are
we
talking about
are.
this movie. First and foremost, do you like this movie? Did you like this movie going in? How did you feel? Just as like a quick wrap up. This isn't the segment where we normally talk about that, but we should get it out of the way. Do you like this movie? Yeah.
Yes, I do.
Okay. I liked this movie when I saw it in theaters, and we'll get into this in episode 2 where we talk more review, but I didn't remember a lot of this movie. There were definitely things that I was like, I thought I liked this movie a lot more. And then there were other parts where I was like, oh, this is much better than I was expecting. So I'm in kind of like a middle cross area about it. Other clarifying question before we really get into it.
Okay.
Do you read the X-Men comics? This is probably a thing we should get out up front.
Sure. I have. I'm not currently caught up.
Okay.
But I have been known to dabble in some X-Men. I'm normally an Avengers guy, but I jump around to different super teams.
All right, cool. So, had you read the comic book that this was based on?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm fairly sure that I read it pretty early on in my comic book fandom. If I'm not mistaken, there was an X-Men the Animated Series episode about Days of Future Past. So I probably watched it there first and then read it. So I had been familiar with the story.
Okay. I am not an X-Men person. I love the X-Men. I think the movies are super fun. I've read a couple of the series. Like I read Astonishing X-Men, I believe.
The Joss Whedon one?
I think so, yeah. It was like 2012 that I read them. I really like the X-Men, but I, like many people, find them to be, it's like a giant wall. There's just so much information. It feels inaccessible a lot of times, and like,
Sure.
I've tried a lot of times to like, here's a little crack I can like fit inside of, and every time I'm like, but I don't understand the continuity of this, or I'm confused about how these characters are connected. And so I think that's part of why I liked this movie so much the first time I saw it, because I was unaware of, I mean, I knew because I'm like a online person and was aware of the discourse or whatever, but like I don't personally know exactly how much they fucked this story up from the comic book, and like I just fully accepted that Wolverine was the person who was in this story. And so I feel like that kind of like tainted the way that I saw this movie, where I know a lot of people can't deal with it because it's supposed to be Jubilee, right?
Kitty Pryde.
Kitty Pryde, that's right. Okay. And I know that's a sore subject for some people. So anyone who's listening to this, like, that's not a problem for me. So sorry, not sorry. I just like this movie.
The sorest subject of all for me is that they basically cut Jubilee out of the X-Men movies both times they tried to put her in, which is very annoying because the second time she was played by Lana Condor, who is great. She's in those Netflix movies, To All the Boys I've Loved.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yes, she's very good.
Those books.
She's funny. I like her a lot. Plus, the second time they tried to do Jubilee, it was set in the 80s, and like Jubilee is like the perfect like 80s mall kid. Ugh.
Yeah, I don't really even know a lot about Jubilee, but I know what her aesthetic is, and like that seems pretty obvious.
I think the problem is that nobody really ever understood what Jubilee's powers were supposed to do in a cinematic way.
Yep.
So they just never made it into the movie in a clear manner.
Yeah, but then again, all of the X-Men movies, the X-Men movie franchise as a whole, has its ups and downs, to say the least. I think that's
emphatically nodding.
Yeah,
yes.
Like, I'm pretty sure the reason why I liked Days of Future Past so much is because, it's the bar was really low, like super, super low. So to have exceeded my expectations was very easy to do.
Did you like First Class? I also saw that in theaters.
I did like First Class.
I also liked First Class.
the biggest thing that annoyed me was that Havoc ended up being older than Cyclops because they don't care about, character stuff, I guess. But it was a fun enough movie.
We'll get into some of that in episode 2, but there were a couple of times where I'm like, I barely know anything about this continuity, and I know some of this stuff this doesn't make any sense. So we'll get into some of that. I wrote some things down that I was like, ask Ben about X, because you will probably know the answers to these questions.
Is one of your drinking rules every time you question the timeline?
Do you want to die? I actually don't remember. Let me read through my list real quick. Sorry, this behind the scenes moment.
It's okay. We'll edit this part out.
All right, good. Congratulations, episode 4.
Before the record, Ansel, you don't like this movie, right?
I mean, of the movies that came out in the 2010s, this is the best one.
Yes.
X-Men First Class I liked a lot.
We're in agreement.
It was very cool, but they made a lot of unnecessary mistakes.
Yeah.
Like, could you not Google your own fucking movie?
Yes.
So
Right.
X-Men First Class did a lot of cool things that I liked, but it made enough mistakes that I ended up on the negative end of things, I think. I'll still watch it, don't get me wrong. Whereas Days of Future Past almost felt like them realizing that they fucked up their own continuity and wanting to fix it. JK, don't worry about continuity because time travel. And then they made Apocalypse, and then I was like, oh, never mind. You don't have any kind of clue what you're doing.
Yeah, Days of Future Past did feel like that a bunch of times, where it was like, oh, this is only so you can just fuck up this continuity. Like that felt, even as someone who's like not really even familiar with the story, it's just like, what the fuck is happening?
Ugh, God.
And then don't even get me started on X-Men Dark Phoenix, because oh boy.
Have not watched it, will not watch it.
It's insane to me how they got 2 chances to do Dark Phoenix.
2 shots? 2!
And they fucked it up both times.
And my wife loves that storyline. She is a big classic X-Men fan. She hasn't been reading the comics since the 90s, I think, but she was super in for the Dark Phoenix stuff. So the double failure makes it very difficult to find times to watch X-Men movies in this house.
Hard no. Get him out of here.
I remember the epic arc that the Dark Phoenix had on X-Men the Animated Series.
I remember that.
So just
I watched a lot of X-Men animated series as a kid, so I feel like most of my X-Men knowledge is actually probably from the animated series.
It's interesting for me because I was reading Captain Britain, and they're just tangentially related enough to the X-Men that Captain Britain got involved. That's how widespread it was in the comics.
That's wild.
But even my tangential understanding of it from the comics made me annoyed at how they mishandled it in the movies.
Thankfully, we're not talking about that movie.
Thank goodness there's no time travel in that one.
We just pretend like, no, that wasn't time travel, but they got in a machine. No, you're mistaken. You're mistaken.
Alternate universe, completely different thing.
Doesn't count.
Nope, nope.
Nope, not interested.
That's an allegory. It didn't happen. Doesn't count.
I wanted to read a couple of tweets because I want to hear Erin's thoughts on these out loud instead of on Twitter.
Okay, I'm ready.
People dismissing comic book movies as kiddie shit and completely failing to realize superhero movies are essentially a collective American mythology and the closest thing to a shared lore we have. Eastern European folk tales and Nordic mythology were largely kiddie shit too. Yes, I know Paul Bunyan, Johnny Appleseed, other tall tales, they exist. But I said collective and shared. Ask your average person in America to tell you the story of Paul Bunyan or the story of Spider-Man and see which one they know. See which one they've even heard of.
First of all, fuck you for asking me about this.
It's just so funny that this came up when we were about to talk about a superhero movie that it lined up so well. So
I know, I was thinking about this as well.
Yeah, so just for context, Alicia Garuso, who has written for a ton of different websites, she's run a couple sites as an editor, but she's, an entertainment journalist. She's actually really great. I've met her a few times. I know her. She's an awesome person. But she recently tweeted those thoughts. I don't remember in reference to what? I think it might have been because of people hating on all the Disney announcements that just came out.
I feel like everyone's flipping a shit about superhero movies every other day on Twitter at this point. So
Correct.
I don't even know context is needed. Just someone wants to complain about how other people feel about superhero movies.
Right.
Evergreen.
And when Alicia tweeted those, I saw you respond. So.
I just think it's absolutely ridiculous. Like, first of all, it is just wildly offensive to call Eastern European mythology and Nordic religion kitty shit. Like, that's not true. It's just a fundamental misunderstanding of how mythology and folklore culture fundamentally works. So it's like upsetting to hear them like shoved in together. And also, like, it is ridiculous to say that these comic book properties, which are owned by conglomerates and by industries, are common shared mythology. Like, if the thing that makes something a common shared mythology is that anyone can take it and make that story part of their own story or tell that in their own way. Like, I can't make a Wolverine movie and put it out and not get sued into oblivion. Like, that automatically disqualifies that as shared common mythology. Like, and the idea that this is what I tweeted, and I fucking totally stand by this. The idea that more people know what fucking Pepper Potts is than know what Bigfoot is just absolutely ridiculous. Like, if you stopped a random person literally anywhere in the country and asked them, do you know what Bigfoot is? They would be like, yeah, I know what Bigfoot is. Like, that is a common shared mythology in America. Like, I could ask any of my three sisters, do you know who Pepper Potts is? And they would say no, and they would probably think she was an animated cartoon pig. Like, it's, and if you think superhero stories, like, that's the whole idea, right? Like, she is linked to Iron Man. That's, like, when you think Iron Man, you should be thinking of her, because that's, like, part of his mythology. Like, people can't even name her. And I saw other people saying, like, the idea that someone knows who Jean Grey is over Paul Bunyan, like, is maybe regional specific, but also, like, is ridiculous. Like, I think a huge part of this is that we as Americans do a really, really bad job of doing, like, cultural literacy as Americans, because our real American myth is the American dream and Manifest Destiny. Like, those are our shared mythologies. That's actually what American mythology is, because that shit's not real, but we all believe it, and we all talk about it like it is, and we all have our own, like, this is my piece of the American dream, and this is my Manifest Destiny. Like, that's what actual cultural mythology is. Yes. And so to see that compared to the X-Men or Spider-Man it's upsetting in a way that, like, I, as somebody who went to college and studied popular culture and that kind, and like literature, especially inside of popular culture, it makes me sad. I understand that people love superheroes and that they feel this very deep connection to them, but there's also, like, this very real element that it is government controlled. Like, these companies answer to the government. Like, the Air Force gets to watch all of the Captain American movies before we do, so that they can say, put this extra shit in to encourage people to join the Air Force. Like, that's real. That happens. And, like, you can't have the control of conglomerates and companies and the government behind these stories and then call them shared American culture. Like, that's just, it's ignorant. And it's, like, upsetting from someone who should really know better that that's not what is actually happening. There was a lot of blowback to what you said too. Definitely. So I know I'm not the only one who was, like, baffled and frustrated by that.
I will say that the way that she worded it and presented this argument isn't the best, but right. The one thing that I took away from it was that there are a lot of people who look down on comic books and comic book culture as Alicia said, kiddie shit. You know, like they say, they talk about that stuff in as it's like in a derogatory manner. You know, like they devalue what these superhero and comic book stories give to pop culture, give to our country. You know, like, it's like Spider-Man is a really important part of popular culture, because like there's a lot of different things that you can learn from Spider-Man. Anyone can be a hero. With great power also comes great responsibility. Like a ton of stuff, you know. And it really boils down to let people enjoy things and don't like come down on people for being excited about the things that they love finally, you know, gaining traction with other people. Like when I was a kid, I wanted nothing more than to see other Asian people in Star Wars or in my comics. You know, I wanted an Asian Spider-Man, right? And now we have Silk, and she's a badass when written by the right person, and I'm sure she's gonna show up on screen eventually too. But like, and then to see you know, Chirrut and Baze in Rogue One in Star Wars, like these are big moments, and these pop culture figures that stemmed from comic books or fantasy or kiddie shit like really mean stuff to people. So just because it's not something that's meaningful to you doesn't mean that you should shit on it. And I think that's what I was taking away from what Alicia was saying. Although the stuff that you and a lot of people online were saying also definitely applies, because those tall tales are definitely part of American culture too.
Right.
And people know
like,
about it. Like they talk about it in school. Like,
yeah,
sure,
exactly.
I know more.
There's not a multi-billion-dollar advertising campaign behind them.
Absolutely.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, like I know about Johnny Appleseed. Do I know as much about Johnny Appleseed as I do about Spider-Man? No, but I still know who Johnny Appleseed is.
I think that's also a really important distinction to make in America
Yeah.
as a highly fractured, regionalized place.
Mm-hmm.
You may not know much about Johnny Appleseed, but I bet you know about the Jersey Devil.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was just gonna say that same thing. Like, just the idea of cryptids in general, like that is American mythology because it's very regional and can be very hyper-specific.
I wonder if conspiracy is the true American shared mythology.
Dude, you might be right, because I feel like that's a really great example of people taking like kind of generalized knowledge and like splintering it, and it like almost oozes out and becomes like tangential but still very similar. Like that's mythology. Like that's oral tradition, is that kind of like change that happens.
Right.
And I feel like you've really nailed it with that the conspiracy theories like have that same kind of like I don't like spindling effect that they like build out and turn into these like bigger webs as they get bigger. Yeah, I think yes.
And not trusting the government is foundational to the
totally
origins of our country. We are born of revolution, and that's all we have as a personal identity. It's like that and a bunch of religious persecution in the name of religious freedom.
I like how this I like how this went full circle to fuck the government. Like that's
yeah, we know what's up. That's the deal. Fuck the government. I also feel I just wanted to add too, as like a quick pin to what you were saying, Ben, about the idea of it being kiddie shit too. I honestly feel that part of this bigger problem with the way that people view comic books and that kind of like I think wrestling is included in this too, and Star Wars, that they are made for children. Like that, but that's the whole deal. Like they are made for children. That's what the marketing campaigns are for. Like that's why they tell these very like generalized, like simple moral stories, and why they try to hook you with like things that you can then get a thing for. Like you can, like with Captain America, like I want this thing. I want to be able to fly a plane. I can either buy a plane toy or a real plane and like go into the military, and like those push you towards that, and like that's the entire idea of the marketing. And again, it's aimed at children.
Yeah.
And I think that's fine. Like I think that's the bigger problem a lot of time. Maybe not bigger, but I think an adjacent problem is that there are some adults who just like cannot be told that this stuff is made for children. They're like, because it means a great deal to me and who I am foundationally as an adult, that means it must be an adult product. And like, that's not true. And that's okay that that's not true. So I feel like there needs to be a little bit of both. It needs to be, it's okay for adults to enjoy things that are meant for, quote unquote, or marketed primarily towards children. That's fine. And it's also okay for things that are marketed towards children to be treated with respect, and not just as like, because it's made for kids, that means it must be garbage. Like, it's clearly not true. And like, lots of things have come out of made and marketed for children. Like fucking Bill Nye is that way. Bill Nye, the science guy is for middle schoolers.
Yep.
But like we as adults still love him and understand like, oh, you're really great at science communication, and that's a thing that I'm into as an adult and I can appreciate. And like no one looks at that and is like, it's kiddie shit, we should just throw it away. Like I think it's a both sides thing. People need to accept that just because things are marketed for children, that doesn't make them bad. And also, because I like a thing, that doesn't mean that it's an adult product.
Right.
I think Bill Nye's also a really good example because Bill Nye he's an example of something that was important to a child that has a long-reaching effect on the adult. And the fact that Bill Nye can come back on the internet now and say, hey, remember when I was explaining photosynthesis to you? Well, maybe grow the fuck up. The planet's on fire.
Yeah.
Yes, totally. And like, I think that that's a huge part of why Captain America has been so upsettingly good at recruiting people into the military-industrial complex, is because people remember it from being a kid, and they're like, I'm really into this idea of like serving and fighting your country, and I got to like play with these action figures, and it made me feel super important. And then they transition that up so that they're aware that the people who are watching that, who are adults, still have that nostalgia. And so they pull at that with that like military propaganda to encourage people to enlist. And like, on one hand, do we need a military? Yes. Do we need it to be the way it is in America? No. And like, it's weird because like, I understand the pull of we need to attract people into this kind of life, but also we're telling them a really dangerous story to like bring them in by playing on their nostalgia as adults. It's a very interesting both sides coin of, I think it's really great with stuff like Bill Nye, where I find it really dangerous with stuff like government and military propaganda. Sure. Once again, back to fuck the government.
Yes. The one thing about Captain America, though, is that a lot of the times when they're using him for propaganda, they forget that the foundational piece of Captain America is that he fights for what's right, not for what the country is. He fights for what the ideal country could be.
2 out of 3 Captain America movies are him fighting the government.
Right, exactly.
Right. And I think that that's also to her point about them superheroes being like a shared thing we all understand. I think Captain America is a perfect example of how that's absolutely not true, where some people see him and are like, he fights for what is right, and he fights the government a lot of times, and he is holding up a moral standard, and other people see him as just Captain America. He stands for America. He wears an American flag. He fights for the American government. Like, people see the same character in 2 wildly different ways, depending on what your already internalized biases are. And like, that's not what happens with shared American mythology. Like, people don't look at Bigfoot and some of them are like, he's a scientist trapped in the woods and we've got to like really respect his space, and other people are like, we should kill him. Like, most people are like, what the fuck is happening here? Like, that's why it's shared, is because there's like a shared reaction to it.
Yeah. It also happens to the Punisher a lot, because a number of people, particularly in the police force, will adapt the Punisher as a role model, and then you have the Punisher himself saying, if you were doing your job, then I wouldn't exist. Like, right,
yes. Yes. The Punisher is such a great example of that.
It's easy to miss the point, as it turns out.
Yeah, right.
Totally. It's funny. This is definitely a tangent, but this is a thing that my husband and I read exactly.
That's what the bonus episode is for.
About comedy for a second. That's something that my husband and I have been talking about a lot recently. Is we watched a really good video with Theo Vaughn and Jim Jeffries, where they both were like, we don't understand feminism, and it freaks us out because we tell a bunch of jokes that we thought people understood were with like a wink and a nod, and then we realized people were laughing at for the wrong reasons and were assuming that we were also misogynist. And so they go to this like feminist meetup group with Whitney Cummings and like then go to like a women's poetry reading and like have a very honest conversation later about how they feel about this. And they, along with Bill Burr, has been saying the same thing recently of, I realized that people weren't in on the joke. They thought that the joke was just flat and that it wasn't like also a wink and a nod, and having to like reassert that and like reapproach that, and understanding that people are interpreting what you're saying in different ways, like how that changes who you are as a comedian and how it becomes very difficult to like, I want to tell these jokes because I think they're funny, but you need to understand that I'm not actually a racist, homophobic bigot. It's that I'm participating in this in like a punch from below kind of way, but people think it's punching down. Like, I think that's a thing that happens in comedy. I think that that's a thing that happens across, like, all kinds of comic book characters. I think that's a thing that happens with lots of different kinds of specifically American pop culture, that we make things vague enough so that they are palatable to lots of different kinds of people without really sticking to our guns about, like, actually, this is the right way to interpret this, and this is that. It's that same, like, artist intent battle. Does the artist intent matter once it's commercially available? Is it actually the consumer who decides what your intent is? And the answer is no. Like, the artist intent is really important, and if people don't understand what the intent is, that's like a failing on the artist part as well. In my personal opinion. I know it's not always up to the artist in that way that things become commercially available, but that's, I think, a huge part of it. If your intent isn't clear and you're unwilling to stand by your intent, anyone can interpret it any way that they want, and, like, that gets very dangerous very quickly. Yes. Again, especially in America.
Yes, it is definitely important.
Yeah, I've had many death of the author conversations recently.
Man. Yeah. Yep. And I also understand, as someone who, like, reads authors who are shitty, sometimes you just want to be like, I have to separate this because I love this piece of media, but you have to do it consciously. You have to understand that you're reading it in a way that is not how the author intended, and, like, you are now putting your own personal spin on it and can't assume other people will feel that way about that media, because they very rightly may listen to what the author actually said and be like, not for me.
Right.
Man, it's too bad school's shitty. If only there was some kind of system where education could have, like, a multi-billion-dollar, like, funder of some kind.
It's too bad that people don't learn about essays in school anymore.
I don't think that exists. I don't think
that must be utopia.
That sounds like something from a comic book.
Good Lord. We should just require, this is like an actual thing I've believed for years. I think that every American student should be required to take a class on propaganda. We used to teach it in schools as, like, part of social studies, and it should be its own class. Media literacy and propaganda. Like, we should just straight up be teaching that to actual children. Like, my nieces are, like, 5, and they should start learning that now, so that by the time they are teenagers and their brains are forming, they can know how to make those decisions.
Hey, if we do put that together, we should make sure they get rhetoric as well. That way they understand the way they're being fed things.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah, logic and rhetoric as well. You know, kind of on a related note, you know. Spot the fallacy, kids.
Cool. So,
oh, man. Anyway.
Find us on the internet. Use the hashtag #Time2Party. That's the number 2. You can find us on the internet.
On Twitter and Instagram, I'm at bsilverio20.
And I'm at NYTUrgency on Instagram.
I'm at Indecisionist on Twitter and at The Indecisionist on Instagram. Special thanks to April Moralba for our podcast art, and to Marlon Longett of Marlon and the Shakes for our awesome theme song.
Yeah, join us next time.
Time travel, crazy stuff.
Woo!
Woo, animated hands. All right.
Until next time, be excellent to each other.
And party on, dudes. Here, time.